What is the deadliest thing on this planet that we regularly face as humans? Well, the answer is stress. But then you might say, well, but actually it's heart disease. Heart disease kills every third person, so it's responsible for every third death. And then I would respond, well, chronic stress is one of the main reasons why we have high blood pressure and why we can't really recover, which in turn produces heart disease. Hence, no. Yes, heart disease is what finally kills, but really what's incredibly dangerous is chronic stress. And that is why we're going to talk about stress today. Hi, I'm Sven, a holistic performance psychologist with the mission of empowering you with the knowledge and tools necessary to consistently achieve your goals. And I love that you're taking time today to explore stress with me. Now, for almost everyone, especially the people that I talk to first, what comes up in the first session always is something related to stress. It's always about, well, I'm not sleeping well. How can I sleep better? I feel like I don't have enough time. How do I get more time? I feel like I'm not really full of energy. I feel like I'm stressed directly. One of those things. I'm working with people that have a lot on their plate, and I'm working with people that have a lot of responsibility. So it's normal that there's lots of stress, you might say. Well, hence, I'm recording this video because I think there's a lot of need out there to better deal with chronic stress. Because short-term stress, not a problem. Long-term stress, chronic stress, is a big problem. So, whenever I talk about stress, whenever I talk about anything pretty much, I like the following model, and that is biopsychosocial. Biopsychosocial to understand stress better. And before we jump into that, one quick but very important piece here. Stress is an interpretation of a threat. Stress means your body believes there is a threat out there. And that is why there's a reaction in one or two or all of these three areas. Let's start with the first one, the biological area. Heart rate. You're starting to shake. You're starting to breathe quicker. Less in your belly, more in your chest. It's harder to think. Generally feel wired. You're stressed. It's the biological component. Then you have the psychological component, which is in here. Now, psychologically, when we talk about stress, we're talking about thoughts and interpretations. You're thinking about something that is stressful. You believe you know what the reaction is going to be, right? Something bad is going to happen. That it means something terrible. It's interpretation. Oh yeah, I just said something bad. I just moved my head and they turned away. Oh, I must have something here. Now I'm out. Terrible. And then we have the last piece here, the social piece. Often forgotten, but very potent. And in my opinion, in my experience, at the bottom of almost every stress factor out there, because it sits very deep, it's very important, deep down wired, the social aspect. Now, I just hinted at that with the psychological example. We're in a social situation and we're constantly interpreting, unconsciously most likely, our standing in that group. Am I okay? Am I potentially being outsorted? Am I annoying anyone? Am I going to be outcast because I did something terrible? It's a very thin line and a very strong reaction usually. So that's why social, also very important piece here. Now, you want to eliminate that response. You don't want to feel stressed anymore. How do you do it? That's what we're going to cover now. First piece here is noticing. awareness. Now this one is especially important because noticing is a lot harder when you're stressed. Because one of the hallmarks when you're feeling stressed is your amygdala is more active. You're more emotional, you're more intuitive. You're thinking less. It's harder to think. It's inhibited. So your prefrontal cortex, which usually does monitoring, am I okay? Am I doing this? How am I standing? What am I saying? How am I looking? How do I feel? Am I feeling stressed? Qualitative, judgment, right? Not feeling, but how am I feeling? That is inhibited. So it may be very hard for you to notice in the moment when you're starting to get stressed. For some people it's quite easy, for other people it's harder. Depends. But you have to notice it. If you struggle to notice and you realize, oh, I was really stressed today, but you only notice at the end of the day, then it might make sense to set a couple reminders. My favorite tool. Calendar, any form of software, just a couple reminders. We usually tend to look at some form of screen. You just put it there and it pops up. It's like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling stressed? And you can look inside and see, well, yeah, actually, I am feeling quite stressed. My heart's beating and I'm thinking I'm about to be fired from my job. Yes, I am stressed. All right, you got that part. You are feeling stressed. Next part. I talked about that it is a perceived threat. Understand why you believe there is a threat. Where is the interpretation coming from? And you can go through these 3 components again. Bio, psycho, social. Sometimes it's enough to just have a biological feeling, something that's happening inside of your body. Heart rate quickens. You can do this example, works very well for me. If my heart rate is becoming too fast and my attention gets drawn to it because it's so fast, because it's so unusual, that is stressing me out because I feel like something bad is happening, right? There must be a reason why my heart rate is so high, which in turn activates my body even more because now the mental, the psychological component just came to it. I notice and I interpret it. This is a threat. And it gets even higher. And then maybe the social component gets to it. You're in a public space and you're feeling very uncomfortable. You don't know what's happening and maybe people will notice. Uncomfortable. So now you have even more fuel. The feedback process is what really feeds stress and can turn into a panic attack. And so panic attacks work for most people. So, biological, you realize that. Okay. How do you fight it? How do you eliminate it? We'll get to that in a bit. But first, notice it. Is that a part of it? Is that a component of it? Or is it maybe just psychological component? You're thinking about something. Okay, so the main issue here is the thought. You think you know how this will turn out and it's terrible and you think that's why it's threatening. Cool, you got it. Or maybe it's primarily social. You believe, well, I just dug my grave, what I just did, everyone is now hating me, I'm going to be out of this group. Or maybe it's a combination of all of these. Understand it. Look inside, understand it. Try your best. That alone, by the way, can already help because it diverts your attention. It kills partly this feedback process that makes you feel more stressed. Last piece, how do you eliminate it? And this is where things become potentially complicated because that's very, very individualistic. For some people, just breathing is enough to build a feedback loop in the opposite direction, where you look at your breathing and your breathing slows down and you believe, okay, I'm fine, it's okay. For some people, it doesn't really work. They have to get out, they have to shower, they have to run, do sports to get the stress, the tension out. For some people, mental is the primary thing, psychological. And here we're talking about reframing potentially. You want to look at the situation, look at it from a different perspective. I'm going to cover reframing in more detail in the last section of this video. So if you're interested in that, keep watching. And then Last piece, social. You could just ask. You could confront it. Confrontation usually also kills the feedback mechanism because you are now getting actual information. You're not just interpreting. Interpretations can spiral out of control. If you ask someone, you have more facts. So you could ask. But then again, maybe it's just about disconnecting from that social environment. Maybe that works better for you. Find what works for you. And now I've already spoiled or said there would be a last section, a little bonus section here. Now that you know that you can eliminate stress, you'd say, well, I'm set. But I can do you one better. What is better than eliminating something? You have a baby, the baby's hungry, baby's screaming because it's hungry. You know how to feed the baby. Great. But you haven't really eliminated the problem. How about you control the response? How about you understand, well, the baby is screaming because the baby is hungry. The baby always gets hungry at these times. If I feed the baby before it's hungry, there won't be any screaming. That is ideal. So, you want to control the response. And for that, I want to add another piece here that makes a lot of sense to remember, which is stress is always an interpretation. It's always subjective. It is never real, if you will. You can always control it. If you know how, you will never be stressed. Very hard to do that all the time to achieve the Zen state, but you can get there. It's potentially possible. Great. Now, how do you control the response? And here there's two pieces to that. On the one hand, that is prevention. You want to avoid it, right? Feed the baby before it starts screaming. How do you do that? Well, you can front load skills. You can front load an identity. For example, if your identity is strong enough and your identity is, I just want to be kind. Or for me, I want to share skills and knowledge. That's what I want to do. If this particular group thinks I'm an idiot, that's okay. It doesn't really affect my goal. My goal is not, my identity is not to teach every single person. Not important. It hurts, but it's not critical to my identity, to my self-esteem. So instead, I'll just move on. I'll find someone else. If your identity is strong enough, like that, it's fine. If you have a performance-based mindset, and it's about what you do, and that determines your value, you're in a heap of trouble. So you might want to look into that. I actually have a video on that if you want to check it out. Now, identity can work. There's another thing that's really powerful. When I created this video, or I thought about this video and I prepared it, it came to my mind and it made a lot of sense. And that is faith. Can be religion, can also be a different faith. If your faith is strong enough, for example, Christianity, determinism, God has all of this planned for you. It's his plan. It's fine. You don't need to understand it, but it's going to be okay. That can really calm you down because it relieves control from you. You don't need to control it. You don't need to do anything. It's fine. Just do your best. You got this. It can really de-stress. It can really take away the threat. Now, prevention. And then you need the part that is off-ramps, which is what you do in that situation. I've already talked about a couple of these before, right? Biopsychosocial. Those are your key elements. I want to add one more, which I already teased, which is reframing. Now, for me personally, it's one of my favorite strategies. And when I talk about reframing, I'm talking about remembering something that puts what you're currently going through in a different frame, in a less threatening frame. All right. For me, that is terrible situations. I've been in some really terrible situations. One of them was when I was hiking, really heavy road, extremely hard to do. And it was more climbing than hiking actually. It was in the middle of this massive mountain and to the closest camp, civilization, couple hours of hiking, really screwed up, big backpack, hiking in this mountain, climbing in this mountain, at some point realizing I can no longer go on because the way was so terrible, because I actually lost the way. And now you have to go back. And it was even harder to go back. I didn't really know what was happening. So started to really feel the situation, realize, oh, I might just die here. This is really, really threatening. Hands started sweating, heart going faster. And now that I'm talking about this, right, mental component, psychological component, I'm getting the opposite. I'm getting this threat feeling, right? A little bit of that. Not too much, but I can feel it. But now, when you realize this, that you were in something so threatening, where your body was telling you, okay, you're done, you're gonna die, talking to a camera, public speaking, being rejected, it's no longer as threatening. That's the power of reframing. And that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like, comment what your favorite stress management practices are, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.